nor get supported healing through trauma. Have you ever wondered how different cultures view and treat trauma? In this episode, we will explore the challenges and the opportunities of providing trauma healing support that respects and integrates diverse cultural perspectives. We'll discuss how cultural factors such as language, beliefs, norms, and societal structure impact individuals' experience of trauma and their willingness to seek help. Buckle your seatbelt and get comfortable to glean from our guest today as she shares insights and experiences in navigating these complexities. Be kind to follow us on all our social media platforms at Up You with Ezinne on YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, and X. We'd love to connect with you and keep this conversation going long after this episode has ended. Please, again, I ask, like and share the stream. Is one way you help our ministry so that we'll continue to serve you better. The topic today is bridging cultural divides in trauma healing. May I remind you at this point that all previous episodes of Up You with Ezinne are up on our YouTube channels, our podcast channels at Up You with Ezinne. Be sure to follow us and don't miss a thing. We'll bring you learning at no cost every week. You're welcome, you're welcome, you're welcome. Now it's time to bring up our guest into the studio. If you're just joining us, remember this is Up You with Ezinne, and the topic on the burner is bridging cultural divides in trauma healing. Our guest today is Dr. Chika Nya-Etok, a lover and seeker of all things beautiful. She's been forever fascinated by words, and so she is an avid reader and writer. An experienced counselor in the pastoral tradition, certified in crisis counseling by Institute of Counseling, Glasgow, UK, Chika helps people find beauty even in the most unlikely of places. She's a trauma healing training facilitator. That is a trainer of trainers. Interesting. Certified by Trauma Healing Institute of American Bible Society, applying a model that combines scientifically proven mental health principles and the wisdom of God's word to bring healing to hurting people in the church. Chika is initiator and driver of EPL, Eat, Play, Laugh, events which are curated to help busy adults find moments of beauty and childlike delight in the frenzy of everyday life. She's a published author of a collection of random thoughts, The Colors I See Through the Lattice, and a contributory author of a chapter on health literacy concepts to a textbook titled Leadership and Management for Health Workers, published by Europe Books. A 2015 Fellow of Health Literacy Leadership Institute, Tufts University School of Medicine, Boston, USA, as well as a Fellow of Institute of Chartered Mediators and Conciliators of Nigeria, specially trained in online dispute resolution. Chika is a public health physician with over 35 years of medical practice, a former country medical advisor of Unilever Nigeria, and CEO of Soul Health Wellness Company. Chika has been married for over 3.5 decades. She is a mother to 3 grown-up children, 2 gentlemen and a lady, grandmother to a delightful 6-year-old, and godmother to many across the globe. Dear everyone, world over, please join me to welcome a beautiful, multifaceted, super talented guest on the show today. Good morning, Doc.
Good morning, Ezinne. Thank you so much for your very kind introduction. And may I start by saying, up you.
Oh, wow. That's a good one. Thank you so much. It's so great to have you on this show. So how are you doing? Let me ask you one-on-one.
I'm doing great, actually. And that's not just a social response, because everybody says that when you say, how are you doing?
Mm-hmm.
And that's one of the
So,
things about trauma. You have to go beyond that, the social response, to say, just stop a second and say, really, how am I doing?
mm, that
Hmm.
is very deep. So we need to go beyond what we are being shown or what we're seeing and dig a little bit deeper. So how are
Yes.
you really doing?
Okay, so
Oh,
can I
wow.
just chip in and tell you a story about that?
Yes, please go ahead.
So I had this experience. You know how you go to church every Sunday, and at the end of the service, everybody's saying, oh, hi, and you're passing, how you doing? And a young lady passed by me. I see her frequently in church. Don't know her too well, but a familiar face. And I said to her, oh, how you doing? She said, I'm fine. And then she walked off. And after taking 2 or 3 steps, she stopped and she said, excuse me, ma, I'm not fine.
Oh, wow.
I was taken aback a little because she's not even someone that really talks to me. So I stopped and I said, okay, so what's been going on? And she started talking. And she started talking. And she couldn't stop. She just talked and talked and talked and talked. And when I found that we had stood there for about 30 to 45 minutes, I had to tell her, can we sit down? And she sat down. And she just kept on talking. And at intervals, she would say to me, I'm sorry, ma, I know I'm taking your time, but I really needed someone to listen to me. And she's in this huge crowd. So it just tells you that a lot of times when we say, how are you doing? And people say, I'm fine, with a smile, and they're looking all beautiful and well-dressed, they may not be fine. And sometimes you see people break down and somebody says, oh, but I don't know what happened to her. She was such a sweet girl. She was always okay. And, she was my neighbor. I knew her. She wasn't fine. So just sharing this to say, as we talk about inclusion, let's also have that in mind. Let's stop and pay attention to one another. Let's go beyond the, oh, how are you doing? I'm fine. When we have time, let's try to make time to go beyond the surface and really find out how we are all doing. Because there's a lot going on globally. There's a lot going on in Nigeria. There's a lot going on everywhere. And beyond what is going on universally, you don't know what each individual is going through. And sometimes maybe a friend of yours doesn't reach out to you and you're so upset, oh, she didn't invite me to her birthday, or I called her and she didn't respond and she didn't call me back. You don't know what she's going through. So I just thought I should throw that in, because if we're talking about trauma, a lot of the trauma that people experience is interpersonal and it's unintended. The people causing the trauma do not intend to cause it, but it's taking place because there's a lot of, I don't want to call it ignorance, we're not aware. We're not very trauma aware. So, yes.
I couldn't have asked for a better intro for this episode. What you just described is trauma. It's amazing. And all that young lady was looking for was someone to see her, someone to hear her, someone to give her a listening ear.
Mm-hmm.
And then her journey to resolving her traumas will start.
Honestly, Ezinne, the interesting thing is, the more she talked, the more I listened. I was thinking of, okay, I'm going to advise her to do this about this, and because she was talking about a lot of things. And at the end of it, when I wanted to speak, she said, "No, I'm fine. You don't need to say anything." As I was talking to you, I realized what I needed to do. I'm fine. You don't need to say. She didn't even let me say anything. She said she was fine, just because I listened. I took the time, because believe it or not, she spoke to me for over 2 hours.
Do you see? That's all it required for her to find herself, to get on her leg and start her journey forward. A listening ear, someone who genuinely cared, someone that was willing to invest 2 hours to listen to her. Thank you, Chika. Thank you for making yourself available for her. And thank you for making yourself available for all the people that will be joining this stream today, and those that will come and also watch later. Thank you, thank you, and thank you.
Thank you, and thank you for giving me the audience too this morning.
You're very
Thank
welcome.
you.
You know, I've always wanted to be in one of your EPL activities. And so, since I haven't gotten the opportunity today, we're going to turn this into an EPL activity, because even though we
Okay.
don't have to eat, we can at least get some play and laughs, because I do know that play, laugh also helps to heal trauma.
Oh, yes,
So,
it does.
yeah. So let's go. Let's go. Let's go. Are you ready?
Yes.
If you're just joining us, this is Up You with Ezinne, and the topic on the banner is bridging cultural divides in trauma healing. So, could you please share your perspective and your understanding of today's topic?
Okay, so I think we should start by trying to give some kind of an idea of what is trauma, because trauma has become a buzzword everywhere now. Everybody's talking trauma, 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 and it means different things to different people.
Mhm.
And I would like to give us some kind of, I don't want to call it a definition, let me call it a description. So, what is trauma? Anything that exceeds your capacity to cope.
Mm. Somebody in the stream, please write that down. Anything that exceeds your
Anything that
capacity.
exceeds your capacity to cope.
I'm crying already.
No. So what is trauma to me may not be trauma to you, because our
Mm.
capacities differ, our personalities differ, our life experiences, our backgrounds, our childhood growing up, so many things that make up who we are, that feed into our ability to cope with various experiences. So anything that exceeds your capacity to cope for you is trauma. Another description I would offer is that trauma is actually a deep wound of the heart and mind that takes a long time to heal. A deep wound of the heart and mind that takes a long time to heal.
A deep one.
So it's not a particular kind of event, but it's the effect any event has on that particular individual. So the definition of trauma, I have to repeat, for me is different from what it is for you and for the next person. One person could be, or two people could be involved in, say, a car crash, and one person just gets over it, remembers it the way they remember the way they lost their pencil last week, and another person, 5, 10 years later, their life is marked by that experience. They are still having nightmares about that experience. The way they, if you tell them to travel, they say, I'm not traveling because I don't want to have an accident. An accident they had 10 years ago. It doesn't make sense to you, but it makes a lot of sense to them. So it is not the event that is trauma. It's not a particular kind of event that is trauma. It is the effect it has. Anything that causes a deep wound of the heart and mind that takes a long time to heal is for that person's trauma. For instance, I've met people whose trauma was something that, okay, I'll give you a specific example. There's a young lady that was in a healing group that I facilitated somewhere. She's a very successful professional. She's married. She has children. She's doing very well. In fact, she's a pastor. But something she hasn't gotten over is a word her father said to her when she was in secondary school. She did something that wasn't good, quite all right. And her father talked to her and said, you're a fool, a very big fool, and you'll be a fool forever. Obviously, he was very upset. Obviously, he didn't think that word would go beyond that day. He just wanted to, drive it home to her that he was very unhappy with her behavior. But little did he know that 20 years later, these words will continue to follow this girl. And anytime she's faced with a challenge, she hears a voice in her head that says, you're a fool, a very big fool. And it makes her feel, I can't be good enough. She's successful. She's married. She's a mother. But she still feels that way. That means she has a deep wound somewhere within her that has not healed. So for her, that is trauma. Now, if she told that story to someone else, the likely response would be, is that what you're still thinking about 20 years later? Come on. But you know what? It's a wound that needs to heal.
You know, the way I'm bobbing my head when I go that way means that I'm actually very deep in reflection, thinking, and absorbing, soaking in what you're saying. I like your choice of words, that the words you use to describe what trauma is, because um, most of us will think that trauma is something that should be earth shaking, something that when it happens the world stop moving, something that there was an eclipse or something, and so hearing something as normal sounding at something your father said to you that has now become an issue for you over the years drives it home that this is per individual, per emotional makeup, per mental stability, per personalities, and all that. I particularly like the fact that you said that what could be traumatic for example, me may just be a walkover for you and vice versa. And so it's safe to say that a whole lot of us have unresolved traumas. And we may not even know that these things are just hiding there and we're just going on. I mean, I love the way you said she was successful. Yes. Your success has nothing to do with the fact that there's a wound on the inside of you that has not done what? Healed.
Yeah.
And we all know when we have a wound on our skin, if it doesn't get healed, it doesn't get healed and it doesn't make us happy. Oh, wow. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. I love this definition. When someone triggers and something happens and they say, but she had it all together. How come she's acting like this? They don't know, do they? But we shall tell them.
so that brings me to parenting, really. Because when we talk trauma, it affects everything. You have to think about parenting because a lot of adults who have unresolved traumas, most of the traumas are unresolved childhood events. They've grown up, they think, okay, I got over it. And then somewhere in their adulthood, some things begin to play out. And they don't even know that there is a connection. There's a very huge survey that was done. It's called the ACE survey, ACE, Adverse Childhood Experiences survey that was done. Yes. Covering over 20,000 people who were found to be suffering from symptoms and signs of trauma as adults. And it was found that more than 2/3 of them, their traumas they were suffering from as adults, were rooted in unresolved childhood traumas. So adverse childhood experiences are really very big as causes of traumas. And I'm raising that to say, I know that most of the people that are listening are adults. We have to be very sensitive as parents. There's something we call trauma-informed care. And trauma-informed care means you should educate yourself, you should inform yourself about what constitutes trauma, how does it affect people, and use that information to inform how you relate to people. And in this case now, your children. May I just say that several surveys have shown that most of the traumas that children suffer are caused by, guess who? Their parents. The very people who are supposed to be caring for them and guiding them, protecting them from external harm are the ones who are unknowingly traumatizing them. So trauma-informed parenting is very important. So the question is, what are the sort of things that could traumatize a child, for instance? There are some that are very obvious. But then again, okay, we're talking about culture. So let me bring in the cultural context. Because when you talk about trauma-informed parenting, if you look at parenting in, say, in Africa versus parenting in the US or anywhere outside Africa, you find that there are cultural contexts to it. There are things that we call discipline that are seen as abuse outside Africa. So there are ways that you relate to your child, there are ways that you speak to your child that could traumatize them. But in the African context, you are told that you're just disciplining your child. But in the world of today, we as parents have to be more aware that our children are no longer just in that African enclave where their culture is what we tell them or what is done in the villages. Culture for children today is universal because they are exposed to the internet. Everybody's on the internet. So what is culture? Culture is the way of life of a people. Their language, their beliefs, their values, all these things are now formed for our children by everyone, everywhere. It's not just you in your little house and your family, friends, and the schools. So when you're thinking, you now have to think broader. You can't parent just anyhow. You have to go beyond. It's not just, I'm not, you can beat your child, for instance, in Nigeria as a form of discipline. But you have to be very careful if you're outside Africa to beat that child because you may not.
They will come and get you.
Because it will not be interpreted as,
Abuse.
as discipline. But anyway, the point is, I was talking about things that can cause trauma for children because we're talking about adverse childhood experiences which lead to trauma in children. So it could be physical abuse. For us, it may be an overt kind of beating. So that's why I was bringing the cultural context in. But even apart from physical abuse, there are things that are very clear. Sexual abuse of a child is traumatic, obviously. But there are also things like neglect. Neglect has been found to be as traumatizing as sexual abuse. Emotional neglect. And in today's world, a lot of adults are busy running up and down, trying to make the money to pay the bills and take care of the children. That's good. But there's nothing as important as having time for your children. And it's not just having time to talk at them or to instruct them, but having time to listen to them. If you want to go away with just one thing from this discussion about what can anybody do about trauma, just take the word listen. Listen. Whether it is listening to an adult that you said, how are you to, or it is listening to a child. Listen to children. You'd be surprised what you learn. In our culture, we tend to just talk to children. We just give them instructions and tell them what to do and get upset when they don't do it. But we need to begin to invite our children to conversations for better mental health. Listen to your child.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you for going where you went to, talking about the cultural perspective, which is what I really want us to talk about today. A few things I have seen or witnessed in life that always bothers me. Growing up, I had a friend, and she had some kind of mental issues, and her parents just upped one day and decided that their family name was more important than the child, and just locked up this child behind the house. No access to anything. Nothing. And that was how that slice of brilliance disappeared. Now, growing up, I had cause to interact with some people, and you find this lady that I met in England, and she says, oh no, I have some kind of mental disorder, but I am on medicine for life, and once I pop my medicine, it keeps me down, and I'm able to have a life, and she has a life, she goes to work, she's married, and all of that. And then in our own climb, the child is locked away. Not even in a mental institute, where institution where help can be gotten, but just locked away in the house and, just kept like that. So I'm wondering, so now, what kind of culture informs this? And how can we navigate this to help? Because that's one woman right there who isn't living, and it can't be only her. There must be several others.
That's the thing about culture. The culture that refuses to admit that mental illness is present and that it's not a death sentence and that there should be no shame around it. Because, for instance, Ezinne, if you were in the kitchen cutting some vegetables and you mistakenly cut your hand with a knife and it's bleeding, would you be ashamed of it?
Obviously not.
No. Would anybody around you be ashamed and say, oh, Ezinne, don't let people see it? They will say, you cut your hand. No.
That person is mentally not okay.
My point is that a human being is spirit, soul, and body. So you can have an injury. As you can have an injury on your body, you can have an injury in your soul. You remember we said that trauma is a deep wound of the heart and mind that takes a long time to heal. It's a wound, it's an injury. What it needs is care. And if it is properly cared for, there will be healing and there will be recovery, just as it happens with a physical injury. So the issue yes, go on.
Go on, you please, go ahead.
So the issue with this stigma, this societal stigma against mental health is something that we as a society, and I'm glad you have a podium, as many of us as have the different platforms that we have, we need to amplify the message that mental health is just part of health. It's like physical health. Mental health, health is total. If somebody is going to be healthy, then they should be healthy everywhere. And if there is a sickness in any part of the human being, then it should be treated with compassion and it shouldn't be hidden. There should be no shame to it. And there is recovery. From any form of mental illness, there is recovery. So, and like I always say, culture is supposed to be dynamic. It's not static. It's not serving us well. This friend you're talking about you never know what she could have become, what she would have contributed to society. And society is losing because she is locked up somewhere and not given access to the kind of therapy or the kind of services that will bring out the best of her and deal with whatever it is that she's dealing with. So we need to speak up and to change the cultures that don't serve us well. We're talking about inclusion. We need to include people who are suffering from mental illness into our society because potentially they have a lot to contribute. Many of them are geniuses, really. You just need to take care of whatever it is that is worrying them by way of getting the proper diagnosis, placing them on proper treatment and proper therapies, and then they function well. I mean, there are people who are suffering from hypertension or diabetes who are on lifelong medication, but they're excellent and useful members of society. And that's the same thing with mental illness. Someone can have an illness or a diagnosis that requires lifelong treatment, but they can also at the same time be useful members of society. And we need to remove the shame. We need to remove the stigma around those things.
The story I told you now, the story I shared with you about my friend it happened around the 80s. And one would think that from the 80s, we've journeyed some 20-something years or 30-something years to get into the 2000s, and that things would have gotten better. However, things are still the same way they are. The stigmatization is sky high. You hear things like, you want to marry from that family? Hmm, their head know they correct though. Or
Yeah.
you hear things like, did you not hear that? So how do we begin to create awareness for people to understand that these people did not bring this thing upon themselves? So it's nothing to do, it should not be an issue of disgrace for them. Yes,
Mhm.
anybody can get ill, any part of our body can get ill. I mean, come on, the princess the other time, yeah, she said, she came on CNN and she said in the UK that she had cancer. I'm
Mhm.
yet to see someone from this climb that will come up and say, I have cancer,
Mm.
I had mastectomy, I have a mental fatigue, or
Mm.
I'm even depressed. You
Yeah.
know, we keep hiding, we keep covering, we just keep doing that, and we forget that the more we do that, we're just covering and covering. It's like sweeping something under the rug, and then one day the woman explodes.
Mhm.
She
Mhm.
explodes on her husband, she explodes on her children, she walks away from everything that means anything to her. And then we say, what happened?
Mm. So you see, it's all there's a lot of superstition. Our society is filled with superstition. So people don't want to say, if you say this, that will go on. So, and this culture of don't let people know, don't let people know. And it also feeds into culture of not expressing your emotions, especially for men. There's this toxic masculinity
Exactly.
that we have in our culture that says that men should not express their feelings. And if a man expresses his feelings and says, I'm sad about this, other men laugh at him and say, come on, don't be a woman, you know.
Woman. Nobody
you
know
know,
what women go through.
you know what I mean? But statistics show that more men die from suicide than women.
Hmm.
And I think it points to the fact that holding it all in is very unhealthy for your mental health. One of the early steps to healing from any form of trauma is being heard. You need to be heard. You need to be able to speak out and say exactly what's going on with you. Whether it is mental illness or it is a distressing experience that you've just gone through, a lot of men go through a lot on the job, in the process of trying to maybe cater for their families, in relationships, family burdens, all sorts of things. But, they just chest it because a man should not talk about it.
A man should be a man. And then we don't even help it again because we say to them, be a man now. You should be able to, this thing happened to so and so yesterday and the person bounced back. What's up with you?
You see, but it's what I say, because again, like you highlighted when you were talking about, when you were introducing me, the form of trauma healing, that the model that we use utilizes the word of God side by side with scientific evidence. So I draw from the Bible sometimes to make my
I'm
analogies.
coming to that. I'm coming to that. Just hold that thought. Someone says, I know a case where a father has ignored his child because he doesn't want people to use it against his status in the society.
But that's very
Can you?
unfortunate. What he doesn't know is that that child, if he takes that child to get some treatment, that child could be the most valuable child he has. That child could contribute the most to that family. That child could actually give the family a name that will be remembered. So it's ignorance that is his problem. He has, in his mind, he thinks nothing good, excuse me, he thinks nothing good can come out of this child. This child is a negative for our family. So
Can you
we,
imagine?
we need to let him know that there is help and there is hope and there is treatment for mental illness. There is no mental illness that does not have treatment. There is always healing for every trauma if you seek the care.
Last week I had a guest, Chichi Romaya, and she said that exclusion cost the world a whole lot because
Mhm.
you exclude geniuses, just because they don't look like us who think we're normal, you know.
Yeah.
So and that's exactly the same thing you're saying. That man may have excluded his glory without
Yeah.
knowing that he just did. And he thinks that the little that he has is like taking a drop when you can have showers.
Yeah.
The little he has been able to do, he thinks that's all of it. God doesn't give you what won't be useful to you. And so we can't just keep doing this. We need to talk about this stuff so that people can get awareness. We can't be talking inclusion when some of us are in our homes hiding away full human beings. Full
Yeah,
human beings.
and I have to also say that social isolation itself can even cause mental illness.
Hmm.
And if we look at the factors that have been found to contribute to good quality of life and longevity, social connectedness ranks high on one of the factors. So it is very important to not exclude people, whether they are mentally ill or whatever it is that is wrong with them. A lot of mental illness is actually, part of the healing comes from the right kind of connection. The right kind of connection. When
And
people interaction, exactly. So again, trauma-informed care. Trauma-informed care says when you see somebody who is acting not like you, to use the expression you used, instead of saying what is wrong with you in a judgmental manner, your attitude should be that of empathy. What happened to you? What happened to you? And what can we do to bring you back to your full health? So instead of being ashamed and hiding, instead of being angry and maybe trying to shout them down and say, why are you behaving this way? You shouldn't. When we have the right information, then we can interact with one another and help each other heal through putting on that lens of trauma-informed care. Instead of what is wrong with you, what happened to you, and how can I love you back to health?
Even the way you ask that question, what happened to you? How can I love you back to health? It's just melted my heart, and I will be open to talk. So you're already, by your manner of approach, breaking down barriers and helping to build trust between myself and yourself, who is the practitioner. Thank you for teaching us that. I hope everybody on the stream is learning. When I was reading your profile, it did say that you counsel and you help resolve trauma in the tradition of the church. But I'm very happy that we brought you out of the church now, because you see, a lot of the sick people are in the marketplace.
Yes.
And I want you to speak to that. You were already doing it before, but I said, hold on, sorry, you can take it as a fresh, full question and dive into it. So
Okay.
how? Just tell us a bit.
Okay, so what I was going to say at that time, I was talking about toxic masculinity, how the culture tells men not to express their emotions, tells men not to cry, and saying that is not good for their mental health. That everybody was created with a wide range of emotions, from joy and laughter to sorrow and everything in between. And God created us that way so we can express each one as the need arises.
Exactly.
So if you say something funny now, I'm going to laugh. So imagine if somebody says, if Ezinne says something funny, don't laugh. Women should not laugh. I mean, that's funny, that's crazy. So if something sad happens, I'm going to cry. So whether we're men or we're women, we are created with that range of emotions. And we should express them as our experiences call for each and every one of them, for us to be whole and healthy. So men should express their emotions as much as women should express their emotions. Human beings were created to express their emotions. And I was going to the church point there to say, our Lord Jesus Christ wept.
Wept. He wept.
A supernatural God man wept. So who are you to say you are too macho to weep?
And you see this thing you're saying, it still comes down to us women. In fact, women, we have a lot of aces we're holding, because we're the ones who basically also train these our sons who become men. And we're the ones who tell them when they're crying as children, don't cry, you're a man. Don't you know you're a boy? Do you not know you're a man? Don't cry. Look at, you cannot show emotions in front of your sisters. It's not done. So we too, we need to just, you know what, just wipe our heads of everything that we know, and then start again in humility to relearn a lot of things. Because if we're going to get it right, then we need to change the biases that we have. We can't, on one hand, be screaming, include us, include us. Meanwhile, we are the ones training from home, exclude us, exclude us. No, you can't be doing one thing and expecting a different set of results, you know. So it's okay to cry as a man. It's okay to come and have a sit down and talk as a man. I mean, if you don't say the things that are wrong with you, we will not be able to do what? Understand you or help you in any way for you to be able to.
Exactly. And, you know, going on that, continuing on that point, and continuing from that scriptural point of view, our Lord Jesus Christ didn't just cry. When he was emotionally distressed, he had 3 friends that he called. He called his 3 friends. And he sat down with them. He said, guys, as you see me, so not be me there here. My heart is breaking. My heart is breaking, guys. And I need to share it with you. And I need you to stay here and pray with me, because I don't know how I'm going to handle this situation. Now, when we read the Bible, we read it and we think it's also spiritual. It is spiritual, but this is reality. It is telling us this is how a man ought to live, to be healthy, spirit, soul, and body. Your heart is broken, you should find 1 or 2 or 3 people that you can sit down with and lay it all down and say. And we are told that he was heartbroken. He said, even my heart is sorrowful, even unto death.
Unto death, yeah.
So you should be able to express it. And your friends should be able to tolerate your expressing it. Because again, we shouldn't have men who tell men, oh boy, why are you doing like this now? Are you a woman?
I know.
We should be there for one another. That's what this trauma-informed care is all about. We should be there to be the one to listen when that person is in distress and help them without being judgmental. Patiently listen. And, you know, when we talk about expressing one's feelings, because this is one of the key foundational things to trauma healing, it also gives permission for people not to express their feelings if they don't want to at the time. And I'm saying this to make reference to the culture that says that, for instance, if a woman loses her spouse, if she doesn't cry, then she must have killed him. The truth is that that woman that is not crying may just be numb, may be totally overwhelmed by the enormity of her loss, that her whole emotions are frozen. She's in shock. And when we are trauma-informed, we can recognize that and know that when people are traumatized, there are various ways it can manifest. While one person may be weeping and rolling all over the place, another person may be numb and absolutely show no emotions, not have the capacity to show it. And we should be able to recognize that and support them even in that season.
And respect it as well.
Respect it.
As well, you know, because another thing, you know, is when something happens to you and everybody comes with their opinions and they say to you, do it like this, do it like that. We should be able to respect people's boundaries as they try to find their way through healing from their traumatic experiences.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, and I have to pick that up to say, even for those of us who are in the church, maybe leaders in the church or whatever, we think that we can impose prayers on people because we mean well for them. When somebody is hurting, sometimes they don't even want to hear your prayer. Sometimes they don't even want to hear about God. Don't even mention God here. And so this is not the time to say, no, 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 no. You have to respect that boundary. Part of helping people heal is to respect them where they are, support them, and stay with them where they are at the time. If somebody is bereaved, for instance, and you go to visit them, and you want to pray, and they say, I don't want to hear about God, can you please just pocket your prayer and look for other ways that you can support that person through that season? When you've gone out, you can pray quietly on your own for the person, but respect their boundaries. These are some of the things that make for trauma healing. Because a lot of times in the fervor, in the religious fervor, we want to tell them, you must not. Are you trying to be against God? Pain is their pain. And if you want to help them heal, respect the boundaries that they set and love them where they are.
It's almost as if you're a wall gecko on my phone, because I have a question here for you that says, let's talk about church and healing. And then now you've just gone smack into it. If you walk the streets of social media, there's a lot of bashing going on for church, pastors, and we Bible believing Christians. And a lot of it, I think, comes from the fact that we have replaced human being to human doing. There's a reason why we are called human beings. Sometimes we're supposed to be, soak it in, allow the next person soak it in. But because we have become a spirit gigi, that's the word I use. We are always in the doing mode. And what happens is that we lose our humanness, we lose our ability to empathize. We come across like people that, because we have Christ, we do no longer have emotions. For instance, I'm a professed Christian, I'm Bible carrying, tongue speaking, and all of that. And so therefore tomorrow, God forbid, let me use my mother who is already dead. My mother dies. And then I come out and I say, all glory to God. Yeah, it's okay. And I'm not crying. And I say, I will not mourn like the and all of that. And I'm not crying. And I don't show any emotions. And everybody says, oh yeah, she's a sold out Christian. That's why. And so some other person who doesn't behave like me, when I say your Christianity is questionable, you do not have faith. But that's not true.
The truth is that I do agree with everything you have said, that in the name of religion, I want to put it this way, we now live in denial of our emotions. We live in denial of our emotions. And that is why I think also there's a lot of talk. There's an expression I've been hearing in recent times, church hurt. People say they've been hurt by the church, because they go through experiences and we rather don't want to accept that we are human beings, even though we are Christians. Like you said, beings, even though we are Christians. The truth is that anybody that suffers any form of trauma, and you remember what we said trauma is, anything that overwhelms your capacity to cope, a deep wound of the heart and mind that takes a long time to heal. Anybody that goes through that experience is goes through a grief journey, actually, because it's a major pain and there are usually a lot of losses that accompany any form of trauma that you have. Even if it's loss of peace of mind, or sometimes it may be even a bereavement, it could actually be a loss of someone. It could even be a loss of reputation. You know, anything that causes you pain, that kind of deep pain that takes a long time to heal. So people go through, it's a grieving process when you're suffering from trauma. And no matter how spiritual you are, you will go on that journey. And there are certain emotions that accompany grief. It has nothing to do with spirituality. You probably have some degree of denial and anger at some point. When you come to a point of acceptance, you're going to go into a period of very deep sadness and a sense of hopelessness at some point. But if you're able to pass through that, at some point you will get to new beginnings. But you see, this journey is not even as straightforward as I've described it. And for every individual, they grieve differently. And it is not right for people to demand that you should pretend that you're okay when you are not okay.
Not. Yeah.
That is what we call taking the false bridge, and it will never lead to healing. It never leads to healing that you pretend and say it is well when it is not well at all. If it is not well, say it is not well. And as a church, and I now want to talk about Universal Church of Christ, not talking about any particular church. As a church, please. We need to make the church a safe space for people to grieve. A safe space for people to grieve and for individuals to grieve in their own peculiar way. One person may grieve and recover from the grief in 6 months or in 1 year. Another person, it may take them 3 years. Whatever is their pace and however they walk that grief journey. Ours as children of God, fellow Christians, is to be there for them, is to love them, is to support them, is to encourage them, is to give them hope, to say, it won't always be like this. The light will shine, and we're here for you. So we need to unlearn and relearn some of these things that we do, which really do not represent our Lord Jesus Christ. Because he loved people. He was empathetic to people. If you look at every encounter he had with individuals, he showed them compassion. Compassion was a word that featured a lot in the Bible, describing Jesus' interaction with human beings. So we have to stop behaving like we're, inanimate objects that have no feelings, and connect with one another and support one another without judgment. Don't tell people how long they should breathe or how deep they should breathe. However each person is grieving, be there for them, love them through it, and support them as much as you can.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Doc. You see, I'm smiling. You used a particular word. You said we should stop behaving like inanimate objects. Slowly but surely, we are all being conditioned into becoming human robots. Human robots that do not feel. Human robots that do not empathize. Human robots that, I don't even know the word to use any longer. But we need to come back, pull back, and find our humanity and find our humanness, and then ensure that we continue to live together and do unto others as we would like it to be done to us. Now, very quickly, Doc, let's bust some myths. There are myths about mental health. There's some myths. Could you help us bust some of them? Can you call up some of them and help us bust it?
Okay. Some people say mental illness is let's see, where those ones are usually here.
As a result of something your father, your grandfather did.
It must be something you did or your parents did, something in your bloodline.
Mm-hmm.
Not true. A lot of mental illness, actually, while I say that is not true, there is something called intergenerational trauma. So if somebody suffers a deep trauma, for instance, the studies that have been done on intergenerational trauma have to do with Holocaust survivors, for instance. So you find that those of them who did not receive the therapy to heal from the trauma that they went through, some of them, their children are manifesting some of those signs and symptoms of unresolved trauma. But having said that, whatever is the cause, even if there is intergenerational trauma, every trauma can be healed. There is healing for trauma. And I think the myth I want to bust there is mental illness cannot be healed. That's the one that people say, that mental illness cannot be healed. But it's not true. There is no mental illness that cannot be healed. And those of them that are rooted in trauma, there is no trauma that cannot be healed. All you need is to be exposed to the right treatment, the right therapies, and people will get healed.
And this is where we need to talk about community. If we're going to do this, yes, Doc, go ahead.
Yes. So, like I had said earlier on in the program, a lot of traumas that people suffer from are interpersonal. It comes from interacting with people, people do things to you, and so on and so forth. But the interesting thing is that a lot of healing is also interpersonal. So a lot of healing happens in the context of community. So we need to come back and rebuild our communities. It's having community around you, paying attention to the people around you. But our communities should be trauma-informed. Remember, I talked about trauma-informed care, which is when we have those around us who may have a problem, may be behaving in ways that we feel are not what we expect. Instead of being judgmental, instead of being angry and saying, what is wrong with you? Instead of excluding them, we can include by approaching them with a compassionate, empathetic approach that says, what happened to you? And how can I love you back to health? Those are the communities we need to build around us.
The magic door opener into our hearts. What happened to you? What's your story you want to share? Yeah. And how can I love you back to wholeness? Yeah. Thank you so much, Doc. From all that I'm hearing from you, there's a lot of work to be done, creating awareness, retelling our stories, creating collaboration, trying to learn from other crimes, and to see how best to manage this issue of resolving trauma. Because
changing the cultures that perpetuate trauma in our societies.
Exactly.
About changing those cultures that perpetuate trauma.
Exactly, and all of that. And when we realize that women are the ones that are, largely marginalized in large numbers due to trauma, then it's time that we bond together and find these solutions ourselves. In fact, generate these solutions, tailor them to ourselves, our climb, our peculiar needs, our niches, so that women can actually draw from them. I like something you said earlier. You said there was a care group that you had. Maybe it's time that women should start those kind of groups, people who have similar trauma storyline, start those kind of small groups, will come together and we actually open something maybe like Alcohol Anonymous, where we come and we heal. Something also like the EPL, where we come, eat, and laugh, So it's time that we start doing those things so that we can heal ourselves. Because honestly,
so we have actually been facilitating groups for the past, this is the third year, healing groups. And in these healing groups, we go on a journey. We start with exploration, self-exploration. We share, we come to self-awareness, and then we find that there are traumas that are unresolved. We take the group on a journey of healing. And we go through the steps and teach intentionally steps to healing from the point of whatever the source of the trauma was until you pick up the skills and the qualities and deal with the issues around it, and then you come to a point of resilience. And resilience means that at that point, you don't just recover from the traumas you had in the past, but that you've picked up skills that going forward, if you have experiences that could potentially traumatize you, because you now have skills of knowing how to deal with traumatizing situations, you can deal with them and you move on as though they were just nothing.
Fantastic. Could you please tell us how we can find these groups or these classes? Are they virtual or is it in person?
It's in person mostly, but we've had to do a few virtual because sometimes we have people coming in from different parts of the world who want to participate. So we have some virtual and then we have some that are in person. You can check my website, soulhealth-wellness.com. You can get more information there. Soulhealth-wellness.
Please, could somebody put that in the screen for me? Soulhealth-wellness.com. In fact, everything about you, Doc, is very intentional. I like that name, Soul Health. You know, most of the times we talk about physical health. And then when we're done with physical health, we talk about mental health. And then when we're done with that, we talk about financial health. And then we go on to social health and all of that. And then we say spiritual health. The fact is that we need to be well all round.
All round, yes.
All round, you know, and there is no time that is late for you to begin to seek healing for yourself. My people have a saying that when you wake up is your morning.
Yeah.
And that's, you know,
you wake up and say good morning.
Exactly. And so whatever time you become aware that there is something that isn't healing in you, it's your morning, and then you begin to seek to get the healing that you require. Yes. Honestly, I can't thank you enough, but like you know, time is usually not on our side when we're having fun. We're probably going to continue this conversation, and if there's anything you've left out, please just come back and put it in the stream so that we can also like get it, because we need this. Because honestly, I feel like a lot of women are walking around with unresolved trauma, you know, and the earlier we start to talk about it, the better, because woman does not support woman. There is something. I mean, why won't you support me? Do you know me from anywhere? Do you see me in your dream? Are we enemies? So why are you not supporting me? I don't like her. Why don't you like me? It's not because of me you don't like me. It's something on the inside of you.
We can begin by making our communities, our groups, trauma informed, where we support one another, we care for one another. What happened to you?
Exactly. All of these baggages that we're carrying can all be resolved, and then we are freer women, and we travel lighter, and we travel faster,
and we can help one another. We can help one another heal, and we can all grow together. There is enough space for all of us to be great. We can all be great.
Please say that again. We need to hear that.
There's enough space for all of us to be great. So I can support you and you support me, and we heal together.
I'm not taking your shine and you're not taking my shine. I'm shining my shine and you're shining your own. And millions of all can all shine at the same time. It will make the world a brighter place to live in.
Yes.
Oh, amazing stuff. Thank you for breaking it down so much. Can we have your closing remarks as you leave us for now? Give us some closing thoughts. Give us some charge, pump us. Give us something to go on with. Make us, take that step and just bust all the barriers and go and look for the help that we need.
Yes, thank you. Thank you so much, Ezinne. It's been an interesting conversation, and I have learned from you, and I hope that the people listening have also learned from our conversation together. And I just want to encourage us that, like I said, there's enough room for everybody to be great. And that's a fact. But what makes for greatness is not even much. You don't have to give money to people. You don't have to do anything. All you need to do is learn to listen. Listening is a skill that every individual can learn. We all hear, but few of us listen. So we can all learn to listen. And to listen without judgment. To listen with the intention of helping the other one to lift that person. You don't know what anybody is going through. So let us build communities where we listen, trauma-informed communities, where we're not judgmental, where we're not angry at one another, where we're not pushing shame, where we're not putting rage, but where we just listen, and lift one another. What happened to you? How can I love you back to health? That's a question we can always have and share with one another. Especially that person that really annoys you when you see her. Who does she think she is? Maybe she's hurting somewhere and she just needs somebody to love her back to health. So I just want to encourage us, whether it's as parents, we should think, what happened to you? How can I love you back to health? Whether we're thinking of our children, trauma-informed parenting, whether as leaders, whether as business leaders, with our staff, the people we work with, let us approach people with that trauma-informed approach, wear that lens, especially the people that don't behave the way we think they ought to behave. What happened to you? How can I love you back to health? We can do it. Let's include one another. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I'm being an agama lizard right now. I'm bobbing my head up and down. And that's because you're making so much sense. I think from next week, I'm going to be asking everybody on this show, what happened to you? No longer how I do.
I hope you have the time to hear everything they have to say.
Oh, well, I think I do know enough people to pass them all along to where they can all be listened to adequately. So thank you so much, Doc. Thank you for gracing our show with your presence today.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting me. Thank you for being so gracious. You will notice I call myself Gracious Dr. Chika.
Yes, I was about to say, you are just a bundle of joy. Honestly, you manifest everything you wrote in your profile.
Wow.
You look for beauty, you find beauty, and it's all exuding around you. Thank you so much. Thank you for educating us on why we should seek help for all the traumas that we carry. None is inconsequential, none is little. So long as it's paining you, so long as it triggers you, so long as you haven't been able to get above it and live without it becoming an issue for you, then it's time to seek for help. Despite our diverse social cultural backgrounds and all whatnot, if you're above 18, for instance, then you don't have to wait for anyone's permission to go look out for yourself. So strike out and look for ways to heal yourself, because it's when you are healthy that you can travel very far. Because like we all know, health is actually the true wealth. Someone who isn't well, whether physically, emotionally, mentally, financially, otherwise, really cannot inspire themselves, let alone inspire somebody else. So we owe it to ourselves, as adults, as human beings, as women, to seek out the best possible healing options for ourselves. So thank you again, Doctor.
Thank you.
And now, dear all you women, bridging cultural divides in trauma healing is our responsibility. We're the ones that will change the narratives. We'll begin in our little homes, in our spaces, to change the narratives. First, to change the mindset, because it's still us that talk about people, that stigmatize people, that talk about it as if they're the ones that brought it upon themselves. Once upon a time, someone shared with me and said that basically like 3 or 4 kinds of people in the world: those going through trauma, those recovering from trauma, those who are helping other people's recover, and those who will still get into trauma. So if long enough, we are going to be traumatized in one form or another. And remember, it is the love that you met out today that will return to you tomorrow. So women, it's time that we change our mindset, change our narratives, and begin to break the biases and the limitations and get the help we need to resolve our traumas. Most of the implosions and misalignments we see in the society today are just caused by previously undetected what? Unresolved traumatic incidences. And it's time we paused and said, hello, I deserve better. And so we will do better and look for better. All right? This is all we can take today on this show. And so this is where we do what? We call it a wrap. And remember, everything we've talked about today is what? Inclusion. Everything we talked about today is inclusion. It's not only when they pull up the table and say, come to the table. No, 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 no. It starts from our mind. We start the inclusion from our mind, and then it begins to manifest in other ways. So, as we wrap up today, please follow us on all our social media platforms at Up You with Ezinne and put on your notifications. Just make sure you get copies of our books, and also make sure you get copies of Dr. Chika's books as well. She's written quite a very interesting one. And make sure you follow her for tips. I'm sure she dishes them out on her Instagram and on her Facebook pages and on her website. Get free tips. At least you, even if you don't have the wherewithal to engage her right now, you can get free tips you can be working on. And if they work for you, then you can look for more. So make sure you follow her as well. Big up to everyone that is involved in creating this magic every week, starting with you, all our listeners, our guests, and the amazing UpU team. Thank you for tuning in. Be sure to join us this same time next week for another interesting, enlightening episode. You know, we promised you a great lineup this month, and I think you know that we have delivered. And so you can imagine what we're going to be doing going forward. We're going to bring in you women who know what we're talking about, wisdom women, that's what I call them. And then they'll come here and they share of their journeys and share of their wisdom, so that we don't have to travel in a difficult way. If someone is pointing the light for you and saying this is the way, and you look is smooth, won't you jump into it? So come on, as you go up the stream today, go talk about what you've heard. Go share with the women in your life. Go share with your family members. Share. Spread awareness. That's one way that you are also inspiring inclusion. Until I come your way next week, please take care of yourself. Take care of yourself and take care of yourself. That's what I leave you with this week. Take care of yourself, because you are the most important person in this journey called life. I love you. I love you all, and is up you. My name is Ezinne Kanem. Can you see my hand? I'm trying to drive and put it into focus. Up you. Bye from Dr. Chika and I.